Aye.
Short Bus Debate Club. It's a bus rolling.
I can get on board. Hello, I'm Darren Jolly.
It's time to get this short bus started. So let's roll and on with the show. Hello, everyone. This is Brian, and you are tuning in to Short Bus Debate Club. This week, Darren and myself are going to talk about homelessness.
For the Monday episode.
Yes, it is Monday. My apologies. So we're going to talk about homelessness. And, for the most part, I think homelessness, when you talk about it, people think about, somebody who's living on the street. And that is definitely part of it. But this day and age, there is a whole new type of homelessness. And we're going to touch on that. We're going to talk about maybe some of the things that have helped homelessness grow and introduce these new types of homelessness and go from there. So we just thought we would bring a really joyous and happy topic to you guys on this Monday.
Nothing motivates better than the joy and the happiness of homelessness.
That's right. That is correct. So I don't know. I noticed a couple of things. So my first trip to Salt Lake City for business was, I think, in 2012, 2013. And not too far from the church, the temple.
The big ass Mormon one downtown at Temple Square.
Correct. There's a huge park. And even in 2016, that park was full of homeless people, and they even had porta potties there for them, and they really took care of them.
It was kind of an encampment then, sort of
I would say even a legal encampment.
Yeah, I didn't mean it with the negative connotations.
Yeah, and cab drivers and Uber drivers, a lot of them would complain about the homeless people, and it seemed like almost overnight these homeless people were dispersed, because one time I was there and the park was full, and then the next time I was there were no homeless people. Now, obviously, there were homeless people, but they just broke up the populations and sent them to other places. So, now all of a sudden, homeless people were around the University of Utah. They were as far south as Provo. They were just in different locations now. Something similar happened in Denver because of the conventions. The GOP came to Denver, and there was the Democratic National Convention, and they broomed all of the homeless people out east. Like the GOP and the DNC didn't know we had homeless people in Denver. And ever since that has happened, we have these dispersed populations, and I think it's done a few things. One, it's introduced homeless people to areas where there were no homeless people before, not very many. But I think it's also made it to where one of the groups in Denver uses a term called continuum of care. And I don't know exactly what that means, but I think that it has helped to where now these homeless people don't have access to the same services that they had access to before, because now they're farther away from all of this stuff. I don't know. I just wanted to mention those two things to kind of kick this thing off. Was there anything in particular you wanted to discuss with regard to homelessness?
Well, we'll get into a lot of that stuff as we go on. Certainly, I think one of the things that when we were chatting about different areas of discussion, I think maybe the most important one for me personally is people that are that have different varieties of mental illness, and that maybe I when we talk about things like the welfare state, right? And it's clear that with the rise of neoliberalism, existing spaces for institutions that were tied to the welfare state kind of got a bad rap. And I think that there's something that's sort of like socially unhealthy about thinking that the welfare of your society, meaning the well-being of your society, uh, like is something that we should look at as, everybody's lazy, if you're, like welfare, blah blah blah, negative. I don't know. There are certain institutions that you need to have inside of a society to function, like education, for one. But I don't want to get on that today. But I think that one of the ones that really sort of gets a bad rap and is invisibilized is, and it came up at the end of I think, the Friday episode last week, is mental health. We really take for granted that there are people that are in society that are just incapable of negotiating the day by day trappings of earning a living and living a quote unquote normal life. And I think that the point that you made about the disbursement, there's no doubt, like as massive amounts of investments went into urban centers, and gigantic private security spaces sort of started to prop up places that were once public places, like maybe that spot that was in Salt Lake, were obliterated and people were sort of forced to move out. Yeah, that stuff is definitely happening. But I just don't think that we can start to solve these questions unless we look at some of those spaces, like, institutions like mental health institutions or other social welfare institutions that maybe are essential to make sure that you have a good functioning society.
Well, I think they are definitely essential. And, so way back when, I think it was 94, I did a college paper on, being homeless. And I can't remember the numbers for sure, but it was something that was, just fucking astronomical. Was somewhere like in the 70s, 70% of homeless people have some sort of mental issue. And when I say that, I'm not just saying, they were depressed. I'm talking about something really bad, like schizophrenia or something along those lines, to where, you said they can't negotiate daily life, and they really can't. I mean, a lot of them are hearing voices, things like that. So if 76% or 75 or even 70% are having these mental health issues, there's something we've got to do about that. And
you can't just brush it away.
No, and it was sort of ironic that I was talking to my doctor about it, who happens to be your doctor too. But he said, because he's been around for a while, but in the late 70s and early 80s, the federal government started cutting funding for places like mental health institutions, sanatorium. Which one is it? Sanatorium, if you can't breathe, right? That's where Doc Holliday died, was a sanatorium.
That is correct. Yeah.
Okay. So
Doc Holliday and mental health.
So they started shutting down these places and cutting funding. So at the federal level, that money starts to trickle down to states. And so when they cut it, then the states no longer have these matching funds So we lose that stuff on a state level as well. So these places where these people used to be housed, and had a location where they had someone giving them their medicine every day, were basically being eliminated. So now these people were basically scattered to the streets, because they no longer had a bed in a hospital, so to speak. And now, if you don't have insurance, you don't have a bed in a hospital. And so basically that means if you're crazy and your parents are rich, then you can get health care and treatment so that you don't end up being homeless because you're schizophrenic. But if you're poor and you don't have insurance, then I guess you end up being homeless.
There was a big, I mean, the funding's gone south so far. There was a big, it was the large institute in Pueblo that really
That
held
was
the
the
criminally
state.
insane.
Yeah.
And I mean, as far as I understand now, that place pretty much doesn't exist. I mean, at least the number of people that they house is not. I mean, they're not doing what they were doing, and the people that uh, they were dealing with. I could tell you a couple stories. I don't think I should, but I know of a couple people that are down there and they don't belong outside of there, and they're not there anymore because they changed the funding in relation to that. And mental health issues are. There was a kid that lived at my house for a year and a half. I'm not going to give him any names, but he lived at my house for a year and a half. I was trying to help this kid. He was bipolar, and if he didn't take his meds appropriately, he would slide into fits of mania. And I don't know if you've been around anybody when they slide into fits of mania. I I had heard about these things in the abstract, but when he moved into the house, I told him, I said, look, dude, if you're going to live in my house, if you start to have problems, if your meds are not working, I really need you to communicate with me about it, right? So he had been there for about 6 or 7 months, and he had started to do some really, really peculiar things. He'd like not come in. It was clear that he wasn't feeling comfortable inside of the house. He just had some odd habits, and when you try to communicate with them, because you're living in a social environment with other people, I mean, you affect other people when you live in a social environment. So what do you have to do? You got to communicate, right? So we try to communicate, and sometimes this individual would shut down in those moments. So he had this red minivan, and he would sit out in front of our house for hours and hours and hours and hours, and he would not come inside, and there was no communication that was happening. And I could see that things were starting to get bad. Like I said, there were a couple things that were communicated, and he just, was not. He refused to talk at this point in time. So this incident occurred where somehow or another he ran out of gas up at King Supers. He had to come back home. He came inside and he said, you told me that if I started to have problems that I needed to communicate to you. Clearly, he was not communicating with me because he was trying to honor an agreement we came into. It was because he had essentially been backed into a corner and he didn't have any other choice. He wasn't going to be able to get his car if I didn't help him at that point. So he told me that he was trying to honor the agreement. So I said, all right, let's go get your car. I said, you follow me back home, and we'll see if we can't figure it out. Well, we got his car. He did not follow me back home. He drove to another parking lot, and he proceeded to sit in that parking lot for 4 days. Did not eat, did not drink. He ended up calling me and leaving 4 voicemails on my phone. And on the fourth day, he ended up in the hospital. And when I went to the hospital, he asked me if I could come down and talk to them to tell them that he did not need to be in the hospital. And I could hear at this point in time that not only was his mind not in the right space, it was in a space that I wasn't familiar with at that point. I mean, I'd interacted with him. I knew that he had some problems, but I don't think that I realized to what extent those problems would come about when they manifest. So when I started to talk to him, the lady who was the psychiatrist came in, and she started to touch. She said, I need to talk to you about what's been happening. What, have you talked to him in the last few days? And he goes and he says, well, I'm going to stand over here. You don't need to pay attention to me. I won't listen to anything that you guys say. So like he's out of it clearly. But she asked me, she says, when you talk to him, is he capable of like listening to you and having a response? I said, no. I said he would say something to me and I would say something back to him, and he would already be on to this next thing, and he would just start spinning and spinning and spinning. And she said, well, he told me that he had said to you that you asked him if he started to have a problem like this to let you know. And he said she said it's clear that he honored that, but you can see that he's not quite in that space of mania, but he is very close to a tipping point right now. And if he was going to get worse, like I said, I'd seen him have some issues, but I'd never had anybody that had like real, like honest to goodness, clear mental health issues so close to me and so in front of me. And just kind of like opened my eyes up to like these problems. Like part of the reason why I let him come to my house in the first place is because I knew that he had been on and off the street for quite a long time. I'd known the kid when we went to high school 15, 20 years before. So I was trying to create a space to where he could come and be, okay. At the end of this cycle, after everything that went on, the clearest lesson that came from it for me was that while my intentions were good, when people have problems like these, they need to have someone who is a professional that is capable of interacting with them so that they can really get the care they need. You can't get it from somebody who's thoughtful and empathetic much as you want to. You need to have a professional. And he's gone now. I haven't talked to him for quite a while. We had to kick him out of the house, but damn, I mean, that was my reality check for somebody who I knew who had been homeless on and off in his life, and about the fact that there are real people out there, a lot more people out there that are worse than that. Like you said, schizophrenic was what you led with. I mean, when you're sliding in and out of, fantasy spaces, I mean, how does a person, I mean, you're really going to turn to them and tell them that it's their fault that.
Well, there's all kinds of stuff. And, we didn't even mention like psychopathy, right? So there's a scale that will tell you how much of a psychopath you are, probably similar to the scale, when we were talking about narcissists in that episode. So there are several key things, to say whether or not you're a psychopath. And because of this funding that we've cut off, a lot of these people, and I don't want to speculate as to the number, but that means that these people that normally would have been hospitalized, who are psychopaths, are now wandering around amongst us. And worse than wandering around amongst us, they're in this free, I don't want to call it free, but I mean they're in this area where it's difficult to monitor them. They're not working. They're not spending money on credit cards or anything like that. So the ways that the government normally watches us to make sure we're doing all of the things we're supposed to be doing, they're not doing those things.
Effectively outside
right
the trappings of the system.
So now we've got these people who are psychopaths, and that ranges, from a whole different scale of stuff, from, pulling the wings off of flies to killing people.
Well, I
didn't. But I'm just saying that's where the scale goes. I mean, you're either on this end and you're kind of a psychopath, or you're on this end and you can be a full-fledged.
The individual that lived at my house, I never felt threatened for my life. Even when I told him it's over, you got to go. Like, so psychopathy is one thing, but there are other categories of mental health issues that are it's one thing to be concerned based on those spaces. It's another thing to just understand that these fuckers, they can't. I mean, they just can't function. And the other thing was, if he earned over a certain amount, he was smart enough to understand that when Obamacare came about, he could go to a psychiatrist and he could get medication and he could manage himself. Like, he was intelligent enough to understand that, and he tried to. But if he earned over a certain amount of money, he lost his access to healthcare, and healthcare was essential. And to his credit, he really tried. He really did try. But having said that, like, you're teaching a person who's trying to be productive, who isn't totally all there. Like, in a perfect world, he might be at a place where he'd be around other folks that are like him, but he'd have his own apartment and he'd be able to manage these things because he would have access to the things that he needs in terms of the healthcare and both in terms of the pharmaceuticals that they need and the direct healthcare that they need in terms of interacting with professionals, right? But nothing. So that's another.
Well, and that's why I said if you're rich, you can have this access to healthcare and be monitored and taken care of the way you need to. But if you're not, then you're kind of screwed. And that goes back to, when we were talking about social welfare and like the SNAP and EBT and all of that stuff. A lot of those people do want to work, but they can't, because if they work a certain number of hours or they make a certain amount of money, they lose access to those benefits. And that's why, again, if I had the money, if I was wealthy, I think that I would really just build a place, and I would train these people. But here's something else, is that a lot of people are saying, oh, well, if you're homeless, you're lazy, whatever, right? Well, the people that are panhandling are not lazy. That's essentially a job. They're too lazy to get a real job, but they're panhandling in order to make their whatever. I'm sure that it varies from place to place, but
it's a skill set.
It kind of is. And those people are not the ones with mental health problems.
Hi, Annie. Annie might actually be. No, I'm not going to say that. I love you. Okay.
Those people are not the ones with mental health problems. So they're the ones that may be lazy to some degree because they don't want to have a real job. But working at panhandling 6 hours a day is work. It's not back-breaking work, but standing out in the hot ass sun for any.
Yeah, I wouldn't pick. I wouldn't pick that.
No. So I did. Okay, so I'm one of the guys that isn't going to give these people money anymore. I think I've been taken advantage of too many times, so I'm kind of done. But a few years ago, well, it's actually been a lot of years now, but back in 2006, when I was running peoplespropaganda.com, I decided that I was going to put the homeless to work. So the ones standing on the corners with their sign that said, need help or will work for food or whatever, I paid a bunch of them to put bumper stickers that said peoplespropaganda.com on their little will work for food sign. And that way.
Did you really?
Fucking A, dude. And I did see, an increase in web traffic. And it was fairly inexpensive advertising. I'm sure.
I mean, what'd you pay him?
Like $5-10, whatever. I mean.
Yeah, whatever. I'm just curious.
It was more than the $2 that
You're giving them money to do that, and yes, there's a.
And he still just had to stand there.
Yeah, you didn't alter the.
Right. And who knows, maybe somebody said, hey, what's peoplespropaganda.com? I would have paid him more if I could have done some training, some vocational training on the corner here. Yeah, but so People's Propaganda is a website. Anyway, so I did pay them. And some people said that I exploited the homeless. Some people said that I wasted my money. Some people said that it was not a bad investment for what I got out of it.
Everybody's got a fucking opinion.
They
made a choice and you did something,
right?
Is more than most people do.
And I actually felt pretty good about it because I wasn't just giving them money, regardless of what they were going to do with it. If they're going to go buy heroin or booze or food, they worked for it. For me, they didn't work a lot. It wasn't hard work, but they worked for it. So I felt better about that than just giving them money. Because these guys that are just, asking for money, most of them, are going to buy booze or heroin or whatever.
At my post office, there's this guy that owns a toy store. He's brilliant. I can't remember the fucking name of the toy store. I'll come up with it later just so I can give him a plug real quick. But he has people wear like Darth Vader suits or like Chewbacca suits, and he's employed more than a couple homeless people to do that, and because they're not gonna, it's not a stable, and they don't want something stable, but it's not, it's like what you did. You make an exchange, you provide that person an opportunity for the day, and they chose to do it, and he's they appreciate it, and then that's. I don't see anything fucking wrong with that.
It's not the Reinke guys, is it?
The what?
Reinke brothers?
No.
Okay.
I'll come up with the fucking name.
So just to kind of, I don't know. A lot of people won't think this is funny, but I thought it was fucking hilarious. So I'm dealing with this one group of IT people in Utah. They worked for a subsidiary of the University of Utah, and we were at lunch, and I was talking to them about where all the homeless people went. And, we were talking, and they said, well, they're still here because the church takes care of them. They treat everybody really nicely as far as the homeless people go. But then this one guy said, well, it's hard in Utah because there's so many hipsters to tell the difference between the homeless and the hipsters. So he said he was in the middle of developing an app called Hipster or Homeless. And you could play it as a game, when you're sitting downtown or whatever. And pictures would go by, and it was, do you think he's homeless or do you think he's a hipster? And, I don't know. I thought it was hysterical, and he should have gone through to development. But
it's funny, but at the same time, like a person that takes advantage of something like that is a cockbag, as far as I'm concerned. There was a guy that used to come to my post office down at 20th and Curtis, and that was after the 2012 sweeping away. And on the north side of the building, the triangle was still there. We would have a fair amount of homeless people that were there, and they were not there. It was sort of a come and go, because no matter what, the emergence of private spaces down there definitely created a difficulty for anybody to. And encampments. Well, there would be encampments here and encampments there. There would be all these efforts to minimize them by people that had investment, because that's the way that shit fucking works. But. What the fuck was I? Oh, this fucking kid, he'd come in and he'd be selling shit online all the time, and then I fucking saw him panhandling on fucking, and I was like, I know this kid is not fucking homeless, and that shit does really, 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 really.
Well, I've heard stories about, there was a story, I don't know, let's see, so it was before Roger moved to Parker, because Jason Hanna was still around, so I don't know. I want to say like 2005, there was a story about some fucking dentist in Chicago, and he would just panhandle part-time, like on
dentist.
weekends and stuff. And he was making an extra $60,000 a year, according to this newspaper article, and why he did a newspaper article or how they found him, I don't know. Maybe they followed him and watched him jump into his Mercedes. But yeah, there are definitely people. I mean, because again, it is work to some degree. But the dentist said he did it because it was tax free and you could make a lot of money doing it. Well, think about it. If he was just doing it part time and he made an extra 60 grand a year, I told you that those guys at the grocery store over there by my old house, they said they were making $300 a day. That's 1,500 a week. That's
Yeah, I get the money. I get the math. I still that I still want to kick that fucking dentist in the knee. And those guys that are over there doing it, like, I think it's like the Fisher King. You see the movie The Fisher King? I fucking love that fucking movie, dude. But there's the guy, the Vietnam vet, like, he's honestly, and then, Jeff Bridges, he makes this comment about it because somebody throws money, but it doesn't go in the cup, and he's like, what a dick, he doesn't even. And the guy says he doesn't have to look at me. He's not paying, or he's a paying customer. Like, when I see somebody like that that's doing something like that because they are in a real situation, when it's a Vietnam vet, when it's a person that has mental deficiencies. And of course, like, I do believe in, and I am not, because I'm a Marxist, I do not believe John Locke. I do not believe social contract theory, but I still believe in concepts like social contracts, where we have these sort of spaces where we're here in it and we're in it together. I would like to think that a person's not trying to dupe me when they're fucking asking for something and I want to help them. But if a person's trying to dupe me, I want to kick them in their fucking knee and break their fucking knee. Then they can spend $60,000 getting their knee fixed for the fucking next 2 years.
Well, I mean, some of them maybe are trying to dupe you. There is the one guy, I haven't seen him around in a while, but he had the sign that said, "Why lie? I need a beer."
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, he's telling the truth, just straight up.
Mm-hmm.
What if the sign just says, "Need a little help"? I mean, where does the dupe begin? If I bring a stroller and I've got a stroller there and I've got a sign and say, please help my kids, or please help me and my kids, I'm definitely duping everybody. Mm-hmm. But I mean, fuck, I definitely could use a little help right now.
Yeah. So right on the corner of Wadsworth and Alameda, I know I'm not supposed to do that, but there's a family, right? And I've actually seen them at this other intersection in that general vicinity as well, where they put one on each corner, and they say they have a picture of a kid that has no hair, and this person needs this is my baby, they're 2 years old, and they have cancer, and they need a surgery, right? So, like, I seen them at this intersection and this other intersection all day long for like 3 or 4 months straight, right? So, like, if I could talk to them and, like, have a conversation with them and, like, believe that what they're saying was true, I might give them fucking $50 or something like that.
Right.
But you get to the point where, like, because they're in nice clothes, they're taking a shower every day before they come down there and do that. There's a difference between, and, like, I hate looking at that and, like, because I want to be able to feel things and be able to choose to. I mean, I'm not gonna. Why the fuck would I say stuff about mentally ill people being fucking homeless unless I fucking cared about shit?
Right.
But having said that, I feel duped.
No, I told you I don't. I mean, I don't give them money anymore. Mm-hmm. I tried to give. There was one guy at a 7-Eleven. It's late at night. He's got a sign that says, "We'll work for food." So I'm on my way somewhere. I don't have a lot of time, but I go back in. I buy a couple of hot dogs, some chips, some drinks. And I give him, a couple of bags. Now, granted, it's gas station food, but I give him 2 bags worth of gas station food. And he's like, "What's that?" And I was like, "Well, you
That's
said
for
you're
food.
hungry.
Yeah.
Here you go." And he said, "I don't fucking want that. I want money." Well, fuck you. So I threw it all away and left. Um, and it's happened a couple of other times where I gave somebody money and then later, saw them at the liquor store or whatever. And I know that the minute that I give them the money, it's no longer mine.
Yeah.
But, I thought I was feeding you.
Yeah.
Or, helping. I mean, I've done that before too. We knew a kid and I gave him shoes and clothes and everything else because he said he needed to go and interview for a job. Yeah. And that never happened.
No.
So
you remember Will at Musicland that I worked with at Musicland when you worked at Musicland, Sam Goody? Whatever. He goes, the same thing. He goes inside of a McDonald's down on 16th Strip Mall, and this guy's got a sign saying, hungry. So he goes and buys two burgers for a guy and brings it out, and the fucking guy takes the burgers and throws them on the ground and stomps on them in front of him. So like the point one of the points we were talking about earlier, like if you have a welfare system structure where you give people disincentives, and I am not going to be a person that's focused on productivity because I am a fucking Marxist, but still, I do think that if you want to solve the problems of the world, I work at the fucking post office, I work my fucking ass off. Anybody that wants to doubt that, they can come fucking see me. I work at fucking Bear Valley, 755 West Amherst. I work my fucking ass off, okay? Oh, the Gnarly Toy Box. That was the name of the store. Brandon is the owner. He's fucking awesome. He's fucking hilarious, dude. But if you create a disincentive for people, if you make over a certain amount of money, we're going to take away your ability to have health care, and that person's mentally incapable of functioning, and then if you're saying we're going to give you some help, but if you make over this amount of money, we're going to take away your food stamps. You need to create incentive spaces, and if you put a time on it, I don't know, like if you can measure the way that a person's making progress, I don't know, but one way or another you need social welfare, but you need to not construct a social welfare system where you give people disincentives to be productive, because what ends up turning out of that is people who fucking stand on the fucking corner that ask for fucking money and use that money to get fucking fentanyl or something like that.
Well, and I said at the beginning we were going to talk about this new type of homelessness, and I've read articles about it. I've actually seen it. There are, well, now that I got booted, I'm technically homeless. I've got a roof over my head, but according to the government, I'm homeless. But there are all these people that are also living in their cars in parking lots, and they have jobs where they're going to work every day and they're homeless. So, Denver, I don't know. I should have looked for the article, but my mom told me that Denver is now number 5 in the most expensive places to live in the United States.
It's expensive in Denver now.
So, I mean, obviously San Francisco is more expensive. I mean, you can't find a place to buy in San Francisco for less than $500,000. And that might even be, it might be higher than that. But anyway, you go to work and the only thing you can really afford is to live in your car. That's a whole new type of homelessness that I don't think ever existed before the last 20 years or so.
There's a movie that came out in 2020 called Nomadland. It had Frances McDermott in it. It's a fucking great actress. She won an Academy Award for it, I believe. But for people that watch, fancy movie, and it was a low budget film, so it didn't get a lot of notoriety, but it did win that award. But it was about that. But there's no doubt that like you make the fucking movie about it, and you got some fucking Hollywood people that are all shaking hands about how they fucking raised consciousness about it. But that doesn't change the fact that there are still people that are essentially there's a guy who so like the high school's right over by where my post office, and there's like a green sort of a green belt that's across the street from right there, and there's a guy who's been hanging out there a bunch lately, and he's got fucking a car, and then he's got like a car of shit strapped to the top of his car, and then a trailer that I'm sure is not fucking road legal back behind him, and he goes down and he uses the water. I mean, he's not gonna be doing it over the course of the next couple months because shit's gonna get cold, but he uses the water to wash his fucking clothes. I mean,
he's doing laundry and shit there.
Yeah, and that dude, I mean, in the area where I work at, that was not, but I'm starting, and there are people that I'm seeing tents popping up in those beltway areas, and I'm not saying this because I want cops to go fucking deal with it. I'm saying these things because these are things that we have to fucking deal with socially. We have to find solutions for these things. If you keep fucking pumping up the fucking cost of housing to where people cannot survive, this is...
Well, and other problems are going to pop up too. I mean, back in, I want to say it was 2002, but it might have been earlier than that. In Colorado Springs and El Paso County, they had problems because there were so many homeless people living along the river, and they were shitting in the river that it polluted all of the fucking water. And now all of a sudden, you had to boil your water and do all of this shit, and because people were getting sick. And so other problems are going to occur if we don't try to get a handle on this. And, the city and county of Denver, they're so proud of themselves for dispersing all of the homeless. Well, basically all they did was make the problem bigger, because now, you can't get a hold of these people and help them. Now, municipalities and county organizations that didn't have the problem before, so nothing was in place for those. So now they don't know what to do with any of these people. So, like you said, tents are popping up places where they never were before. They're utilizing resources that aren't necessarily even there, whether you're talking about, and if they're drinking water out of fucking Bear Valley, there's a chance that they're gonna get sick and fucking die.
I don't know if they're drinking it, but they're definitely using it for cleaning shit for sure, and probably for some of the stuff you were talking about.
And that ends up being a problem for everybody else. Mm-hmm. So again, don't do like I do and automatically assume these people are, just lazy and panhandling because they don't want to get a job. They could be just straight fucked up in the head, and may actually need some help. And a lot of them probably do. So I know we're coming up on 45 minutes. There were some things that I thought about talking about, and we didn't really get it covered, but I think we'll probably circle back to this at some point, because, social welfare and homelessness isn't something that we can do within an hour and a half, and between the two episodes, that's where we are. So,
yeah. I got nothing else. I mean, there's a million things that we barely we scratched this. We scratched. There's one just closing, and this is I found this on the World Socialist website. Gerald Brevard III was arrested. This was back in March. He was targeting fucking homeless people in Washington D.C. and in looks like in New York City as well, Manhattan. He shot a fucking guy in his fucking tent and lit it on fire. Like targeting people and killing them for being homeless. You know, that dude's got fucking mental problems that he needs to get checked out. But if anybody's going to that fucking extreme, you need to check yourself a little bit. And look, I'm not a liberal. You know, like I said, I'm a Marxist. So like, there's a difference between those two things. But I care for people. But fucking lighting a goddamn tent on fire after you shoot somebody, whew, I hope that guy gets punished severely.
I'm sure he will, since they caught him. But
Mhm.
remember, I mean, homeless, they are always a target on some level. Don't you remember when they were beheading all of those homeless
Yeah,
people
I
here
didn't
in
even think
Denver?
about that until just then. Yeah, and those were kids that did that, if I remember
Well,
correctly.
they didn't actually catch anybody.
Uh-huh.
It's still an
Oh,
open
really?
case
Okay.
because when I was doing research for my book, I was calling the Denver police. I'm like, look, I can't find the entrance to those tunnels. Where are those tunnels? Remember, they, put all those heads in there, and they put me on hold, and then another cop came on, and he's like, that's still an open case. What's your name again? And I was like, Brian Courtney. And he goes, we can't tell you where those tunnels are. So anyway, no, they didn't catch anybody.
It's still an open case. Yeah, until I just said that, I totally forgot that even happened.
Yeah, so they target homeless people a lot, which, I mean, I don't know. There was that one shitty movie where it was Jean-Claude Van Damme, and they hunted people.
If you say there was this movie with Jean-Claude Van Damme, you don't really need to say that it was a shitty movie. It's sort of redundant at that.
Yeah, it's implied. Yeah. All right.
What did they hunted people? I didn't never see it. I mean,
so they were taking homeless people off the street, and they would pay them. They would say, okay, if you make it through the weekend or whatever, then you get money. But it was all of these rich people who wanted
the most dangerous game, but for homeless people, essentially.
Yeah.
I think that we should do that with rich people.
Hunting rich people? Yeah.
I'd like to do that with Jeff Bezos. Now, having said that, I don't have any connection with him. I don't know where he's at. So if he disappears, I'm always where I'm supposed to be. But having said that, eat the rich, man. Come on.
Eat the rich. All right. Well, we got to go. It's 47 minutes. We could talk a lot of shit from here on out, but and Darren doesn't have anything against Amazon or Bezos, so
or even rich people for that matter.
No, but it would be fun to hunt them. All right. Short bus debate on
roll.
I don't think you got that, but that's
720-334 roll.
Roll. And yeah, TikTok short bus debate, or no, that's Twitter, and then short bus debate club on TikTok. Talk to you later. We're talking about monsters.
Things on the short bus that make contact with the road.
With the road.